Great. Thank you so much, Allison and Jackie. We've had a whole bunch of questions that have come through, so I have the pleasure of highlighting some of those, and hopefully we can get through a number of them. One that has been sort of up-ranked to the top is around how many Kabuki patients have you seen at Kennedy, Krieger, and Johns Hopkins? Just give us a sense for how many patients you're seeing and what a center of excellence looks like in terms of that kind of volume for a rare condition like Kabuki.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, so as far as patients who we regularly follow, so who come back regularly to Baltimore for their general Kabuki syndrome care, somewhere in the high 20s is what we follow. As far as patients who are geographically located that they don't come back super regularly, or they have a care team but they just might come for a one-time visit, or to participate in research, or just for periodic check-ins. It's closer to 60 across all the age ranges, children through adults.
Great. There was a question that had come through about some of what you highlighted, Jackie, on visual spatial deficiency. How does that actually manifest in the day-to-day of a Kabuki child or a young adult? And how do you see that changing as they navigate into adulthood?
Absolutely. So I could talk a little bit about what I know. But tomorrow too, when there is the young adult panel, I definitely encourage everybody to ask them kind of what their experience has been as well, because they have, of course, the best perspective. But what we see is lots of trouble with, things like puzzles, things like copying drawings. When you're looking at, kind of if they're trying to construct something or think about something, they sometimes can kind of what we call missing the forest for the trees. So, they see this little part or this little part or this little part, but don't see the whole picture. And so that can create difficulty in a number of areas. It can create difficulty in school age in reading, especially as you're learning to sort of do the actual reading. So recognize letters and words and things like that could be more difficult, even though we know that sort of verbal comprehension and understanding and even memory is a huge strength for these kids. Later on, math can get very, very tough because of the necessity to sort of organize it. And then again, I encourage you to ask the young adults, but we have lots of reports of difficulties in navigating the environment. So remembering how to find your way around, and where things are placed and things like that. So it really has a huge effect on definitely academic skills, and then even ability to function in the community later. And just to put in one more plug for even the virtual survey, we're trying to understand more about that functioning in the community and how those things do affect our individuals with Kabuki syndrome. And so participating in that can help give us a lot more information.
Fantastic. Did get lots of questions that came through around how can I sign up for the survey studies. And so I think that's a great sign. People are keen and eager to participate in that research. And both the emails that were shared just on that prior slide, please do reach out to Jackie, to Allison, and also we will follow up to all participants with that information so that they'll be sure to know how to sign up.
And it's in the research recruitment tab right now too. So if you want to see the flyer, it has our emails and things like that, by all means.
Please. Yes, I think part of the goal is to catalyze participation in research even today and tomorrow as we're all participating in this conference. There were a number of questions around the anxiety phenotype and the sort of anxiety symptom. So how early are you finding the anxiety symptoms start to set in? And then are there medications that are helpful, generally speaking, for teenage years and older? And I guess related to that, like, is there anything that parents can be looking out for in their kids early on, and things that they might be able to do to prevent its onset if there's a predisposition towards anxiety?
Those are really, really wonderful questions. So in kids with Kabuki syndrome, the onset is a little bit variable. So I have some very young kids who are already displaying a lot of anxiety. But for the most part, I would say we really start to see it set in and become impairing um, around the kind of late preteen years. So, somewhere between 10 and 14, we really start to notice it. And then a lot of times it gets a lot worse as our kiddos move toward adulthood and get older. Then things to look out for when you're doing it is so one thing is anxiety can present looking a lot like autism, but the way you manage it can be a little bit different. So if you're seeing kind of lots of those autistic features come on, I would just, have your physician, check in about anxiety. So those could be rigidity, not being flexible in routines, perseverating on things, not able to settle down because of worries about certain things. Those are all kind of common early steps. As far as what you could do sort of behaviorally is work together with the caregivers and school team to put things in place, sort of frequent reminders, knowing what the schedule is ahead of time, preparation, those kind of things. And then as far as medications, we're looking more into this, but we think that the medicines SSRIs may be particularly useful for Kabuki syndrome, but we're going to find out more about that hopefully through the research.
That's really helpful. There was a question about the autism link or potential link, I guess, not a diagnosis, but at least in some of the aspects of Kabuki syndrome and autism that could seem similar. There's a question specifically on ABA therapy, which can often require a diagnosis of autism. Do you have an opinion on that inclusion of ABA therapy in the toolkit for Kabuki syndrome patients?
Yeah, so that's such a great question. So first of all, ABA therapy is just a method of therapy that can be very useful for people with a number of different neurodevelopmental disabilities. And it has been kind of confiscated or co-opted by the autism community, but it is not uniquely effective to them. And so usually where I start in the Kabuki kids is I write letters to the insurance companies, the providers, et cetera, saying, this is what we know about Kabuki syndrome. These are the way it manifests. And this is how it can be helpful, how ABA therapy can be specifically helpful for Kabuki syndrome. And I try to keep that as the diagnosis. If they still balk at me, there are times where I will write a letter saying, okay, technically by DSM-5 criteria, this patient has this feature, this feature, this feature. And so, yes, they could meet for a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, even though I don't think that that is generally a correct diagnosis in Kabuki syndrome, because it happens. There are definitely people with Kabuki syndrome and autism, but there are a lot of features usually that are quite different.
That's really helpful. Specifically, you guys talked a lot about clinical trials, both clinical trial preparation and then an ongoing trial on the ketogenic diet side. Can you maybe tell us about the timeline on the trial that's currently running? So when you'd hope to have that wrapped up and have an answer for the community on the basis of the outcome. And then secondly, there was a question about how close we are to creating a clinical trial around a new drug. So maybe you could talk about both of those things.
Yeah, so let me turn the first one over to Allison. Allison, if you want to answer about the keto trial, and then I will take on the second part.
Sure. So we've had 8 or 9 participants that have started and completed the diet trial. So our goal for the pilot is to get 15. And then we can kind of look at the scoring on the cognitive testing before and after. We'll run our methylation array, look at the urine, everything that I kind of spoke about for that. So our goal for that is 15. And then from there, we can kind of move to a larger scale.
Perfect. And so I wanted to just say overall on this, I think that the ketogenic diet or the modified Atkins diet trial is going to be incredibly important, incredibly informative, and give us a lot of information about biology, about treatability of Kabuki syndrome, and lots of different things. That said, I don't know that it is going to be the end all and be all of treatment in Kabuki syndrome for a lot of reasons. It can be very difficult to comply with. Even if you are extremely compliant, we really don't know and don't think it is like something that we would want to put someone on from a tiny baby and leave them on for their entire life, right? There are, heart and kidney side effects to being on that sort of high fat, low carb profile for a very long time. And so we think it is, part of the picture, but certainly not the whole picture. And so, something you're going to hear more about tomorrow is some other investigations into therapies that could potentially be more immediately useful and long-term useful for Kabuki syndrome. And those things are extremely close. Okay. So someone asked a question in Dr. Bjornson's segment about, are we talking about, months? Are we talking about years? Are we talking about 20 years? And the answer is right now, if things keep going, we're talking about months to years. So the importance of, engagement, whether that be financial, whether that be participating in research, whether that be giving blood samples, whatever it is for everybody that you're going to hear from throughout these 2 days is important. This is an immediate need because we think we are super, super close and we can't do it without you all.
Well, on that note, I just had some breaking news that came in while we were talking that just over the course of this session, we raised an extra 10K, which means an extra 30K due to the match. So we're just about $100,000 for the organization so far. It's so exciting to think about what's possible, to your point, Jackie, on where we are at this inflection point in time, how we can support some of these amazing initiatives that you and others are participating in and spearheading. And just to give you a sense for what some of these funds can help support, I mean, it costs roughly $60,000 or so to support a full-time postdoc to participate and to really spearhead some of the research that has been talked about here. So we're almost at 2 full-time people that we can now allocate to Kabuki syndrome, just thanks to the generous donations that have come in so far. So thank you so much to both of you, Allison, and to yourself, Jackie, for your continued support.